Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold and you read the title right. KingsIsle is in fact ruining raids. Yeah, it's tough. But more specifically, the Azteca Crying Sky raid is getting ruined. Voracious Void, I'm not really expecting too many changes. That has gone through plenty of changes that has completely shook up the strat needed to win. But for the Crying Sky raid, it's the hardest content that's ever been put out in this game, and to tell you the truth, it's like eventually the player base got the hang of it, and there are at least 3 strats out that work reliably and have gotten times of 12 minutes or above after the raid was unwinnable for 3 whole months following release. And as I'm sure some of you remember, nobody was able to beat the raid on the summer test round, and then it took all the way until, I believe, October 6th, if I'm not mistaken, for any guilds to beat the raid, and that was after, approximately a week after a series of nerfs was applied to, make the raid actually playable. But in the months since, and especially over this last week, the KingsIsle and Wizard101 developers have been talking about sending out just this array of nerfs, like they usually do. So this is going to come with the release of the Nightmare Dungeon, which coincidentally, when that drops, the level 170 Xibalba and Hunhao hats, robes, boots, and wands will come out. And pieces like the wands and like the Hunhao robes for PvPers, especially, they're going to be very, very solid pieces of gear. I would argue they would be best in slot. So for these nerfs to happen the day that the new stuff drops is, I don't know. It's like they want people to play the raid, but then they do all of this that I'll get into this video. You are tweaking. Play the animation again. Oh, yep, there it is. Hold up. Okay, wait for it. Am I seeing things? I swear I'm not seeing things. It happened before. Oh, see? Okay, that little thing right there. And it's gone. What the hell? So, as of late, there has been a problem in PvP that I went over a couple of weeks back about quote-unquote cosplaying, or really just off-schooling using a school that is not your own. Like, for example, if I went fully into fire as a myth, for example, that would be considered off-schooling or cosplaying. And it created a real problem in the arena. Lower DPP schools were using storm spells to just like do insane amounts of damage while having higher health and resist, and it was a real problem. There was not really much of a way to counter these. They would just spam you down while not being able to get spammed down themselves, and then all the while, they would set up gambits, and it was a whole thing, and it really needed to get nerfed, and that was the main point of these nerfs that are coming with the Nightmare Dungeon. So these nerfs start with, and there's a lot, but they start with Trap and Blade Gambits are getting just totally nuked. Right now, all of them, I think, except for Fire Gen, are, like, they double the damage on the conditional. Like, Ivan's story time right here, this is a Trap or quote-unquote Jinx Gambit, which will do 1800 damage if you have 4 traps on your target. So this is coming down to a 1.4 times multiplier, which I think, I'm not doing all the mental math, but it would be more like 1330 something damage as opposed to 1800, which is a considerable nerf. And to me, I just don't really get why these in particular are being nerfed just across the board. And I could really get into, like PvP and raids should be separate. Like I could really talk at length about that. But yeah, I mean this will go from a really, really solid spell down to like, why would you use it? Like, it'll get to that point, and I feel like that's just as intended by the devs here. They don't want people, you know, off-schooling and then just using, like, blade and trap gambits to do mass in PvP. But this is going to really, really hurt raids, because in a raid, you know, it's like a lot of the best strats use this storm off-schooling, I guess, tactic to really, like, make the raid easier and much more consistent. And, you know, there are guilds like mine that use Storm Scion in a lot of fights, and other guilds which are, like, way heavier on the dual school strats. They will also use Storm Scion, Turmoil Oni, you know, Fire Djinn maybe on an off school. It's like there's just a lot of... They want to do a lot of damage off school, so that way they can avoid the, you know, 50% weaknesses that get cheat casted on you, like at the start of every fight against, like, a death or a storm mob. So they mostly do it for security, as do we. And, you know, if these gambits get nerfed for off-schooling, then it's like, you know, the hell are we gonna do? So it's like, for all we know, you know, mono schoolers are also going to get their gambits nerfed. It's like they're basically just gonna cut these down across the board, and it's gonna be... It's like mono schoolers are getting punished for, like, off schoolers, I guess, tactics. And it makes absolutely no sense if that were to happen. I think that if you're using a gambit that is, like, on your school, then you should be able to get the full effect from that. It would make, you know, storms more dangerous in PvP. It would make them better in raids, that's for sure. But if they're cutting these just across the board, that is just a colossal nuke to gambits as a whole. And if gambits as a whole go, and these don't come back down to one shad, we're going to be in a very, very slow PvP meta again if every single school doesn't go right back to just, like, trap stacking, which is what I think will happen if this ends up happening across the board. So I think on-school gambits should remain as they are, but off-schooling, it's like there's better ways to nerf off-schooling, and I can get into why in a second. So also in the game plan is that off-school stats are coming down with the gambits. So it's like some schools are going to be losing up to 50 damage. Like if you're an Ice or a Life trying to dual school into Storm, and, you know, your stat caps are 175 damage, you'll probably only end up having 125 damage instead of your 175. And it's like this, again, this needed to happen in PvP, but for raids, it's just gonna be, it's like the gambits themselves are already getting nerfed. It's like, why do those stats need to come down as well if that's happening? It's like, they should do one or the other and not both, because it's like Ratbeard has pushed so hard for dual schooling, and now it's just, it feels like all of that is being undone, and I don't know why. It's like they really could go about this so much better. But I do think that lowering the off-school stat caps is a good idea. I think it's a good way to combat the, you know, off-schooling epidemic that we see in PvP specifically. And that's if, you know, they never separate raids from PvP, which they really should do. I feel like if raids were separate from PvP, then gambits could stay the same, and, you know, it's all good if that were to happen. But for the moment, they don't seem to want to do that, and it's like the best solution, if they don't want to separate the two, is to just reduce the stat caps on, you know, like damage and pierce for off school and not the actual cards. So that way there's no ambiguity, no misunderstanding. It's like, I'm not even sure if they're gonna nerf on school gambits, but the way they're making it sound, that's how it looks. So if we could get some clarification on that, if one of the devs decides to watch this, that would be very, very nice. Another thing that has been mentioned, and this is where they're really ruining the Crying Sky raid, is that will cast talents, they may get banned. The developer Cam or Hephaestus has talked about wanting to do that, and it just, it just seems strange to me. Like, why would you do that? It's like, we finally cracked the code for the hardest content ever that the devs have gone out and said was too hard, and that they're going to like cut back on the difficulty for the next raid. But it's like, we worked it out. We, like, multiple guilds have worked out strats for this, you know, hardest content to ever touch the game, and now he just wants to make it harder. I couldn't tell you why. It's like, we've done it, you know? It's like, guilds have cracked the code. We can beat the raid now, and the willcasts are a huge part of it. It's like, they were literally part of the Hunhao pet drops. Literally, these willcasts, like Torrance's Rage, like Ivan's Rage, it's like those, they all came from this raid, like the raid pets, like the Quetzal pets. And the fact that Cam wants to ban them now because they quote unquote weren't meant to be used in raids. It's like, apparently they were meant to be used in PvP, but it's like nobody ever uses them in PvP, so it's like they're really great for raids. But I guess Cam didn't like that, so now he wants to ban them. And if he gets his way, the raid will be, I mean, it's gonna be bad, dude. Like, multiple raid strategists, including Ant, who has made the strat that my guild uses, and Major, the guy that probably a lot of you know, for making the Roaring Raptor strat and all that. Both of them are about ready to give up if willcasts go, because willcasts make the final fight against Hunhao much more consistent, and it's like banning them. It's like a Solar Search situation all over again. And okay, while we're on that topic, Dino decks, like the Dino polymorphs, like the Yatasha, Outlock, Ishta, Kameka, like, they all have their own spell decks that get activated in Hunhao. They are just chock full of random garbage. It's meant to make pulling just bad. It's like, you need to pull your cards, and it's like, Ishta, the Ishta polymorph, does not actually have a Storm Scion in its main deck, so the willcast is required for Ishta already because of that, and the Kameka polymorph does have it, but you need to really, like, cycle hard to pull it. So it's like, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, deck RNG in this game is unfathomably cruel. And whenever the devs seem to see that the player base has found a way to mitigate deck RNG, they always just throw us right back under the bus and ban it. They just ban. They take out their Ratbeard no PvP 101 symbol and just slap it on everything that helps with mitigating deck RNG, because they want deck RNG in the game, and they want it to be extremely oppressive and make raid strategies a lot less consistent. And, like, I should mention, for those unaware, it's like massive deck RNG in a fight where the boss straight up has a win condition, being Hunhao's 100% health meteor cheat, which just straight up ends the raid. It's like, you just lose if that happens. It's like, nobody knows what causes that, and with how costly the keys are to make, nobody really wants to find out. And so the best way is to just, you know, kill him as fast as possible. You can round 2 kill Hunhao, and that's something that is honestly an impressive feat that the players have figured out, especially for the hardest content ever put into the game. And I don't know, I think the devs, they don't like that. They don't like that we're smart. So I don't know what's in store. And the idea of removing willcast, it's not confirmed yet, but I feel like certain developers are gonna, you know, catch wind of it and be like, oh, you know, let's do it. This idea of erasing this willcast talent that is meant to mitigate deck RNG in people's strats, we should ban that. We should really make it much less consistent for people to win the raid. And it's like, that has been their mentality, and I just, it's pain, man, it's pain. Now, all of this means that there's going to be way more cantrips acquired and at higher levels, which will drive up the cost to raid and the barrier to entry. And It's like the barrier to entry for the Azteca raid was already so high. So I don't know why they're doing it again. Like, the devs have gone on record and said that they made this raid too hard and want to take a step back for future raids, yet they're doing this anyway, and they're telling us to, like, straight up adapt. Like, so which is it, Mr. Beard? do you want to, you know, take a step back and, like, let us raid with what we figured out? It's like, we cracked the code, and it's like now they want to just make it harder for some reason. It's like they want to make the hardest content in the game that they have gone on record and said was overtuned. They just want to make it impossible again, and we're gonna go into like another 3-month period where nobody can beat the raid, and from there it's like nobody can beat the raid consistently for another little while. So it's like, overall, raids are getting just like straight up ruined. Like, there is no question about it. The Crying Sky raid is going to go back to being dead content. Nobody is going to be interested in raiding anymore, and it will be the devs' fault. Nobody will want to raid anymore, and it will be their fault. It will be on their heads, and it's like, what's the point of being in a guild at that point anymore? It's like the museum, nobody really cares about that. I hope that they really reconsider these changes, and I really hope that they just don't ban the willcast, because that is kind of all that we have in terms of being able to actually consistently win the raid. They don't want to see us winning. And yeah, it makes no sense. They should want the players to be able to win the raid and beat their super hard content, because it shows just, you know, how good we are. It's like having the Ender of Death, Conqueror of Death, even people have gotten Vanquisher of Death lately. It's like, that is a badge of honor. It's like, if you have beaten the raid, the hardest content in the game, it's like, you deserve some bragging rights. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. I really hope that they reconsider all of this, and really, like, I should really just make another video probably this weekend talking about how raids and PvP need to just be totally and entirely separate, because these changes are aimed at PvP. They want to, you know, nerf offschooling in PvP, but it's just gonna totally dismantle raid strats, and that's not good. And they need to just really think about what they're doing and find a solution that works for both. And, you know, spoiler alert, the solution that works for both is separating the two damn game modes. So, balls in your court, Ratbeard. Please don't let us down for a 58th time. Thank y'all for watching. I have been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more. And I will see y'all later.